Okay, half a day, everyone. Welcome to EMC Squared's fourth episode of Alumni Series. Before we get started, please don't forget to sign in. Our guest speaker for today is Mr. Celestino Aguon. Celestino is a F-15C Eagle pilot assigned to the 67th Squadron from Kadena Air Base. He is responsible for being an expert of F-15C specific aircraft systems and the execution of air-to-air combat tactics. Hence, without any further ado, please welcome Mr. Celestino Aguon.
First off, thanks for, I'm always honored to be able to share my story with you guys today. So let me go ahead and start sharing my screen and we'll get started. Okay, can I get a quick thumbs up that you can see my screen? All right. So what I'll share with you today is just some of my background, the journey I took to get to where I'm currently at, and then what I currently do, and then some opportunities for the future for myself. But overall, I'm going to go and tie in how having a STEM degree plays a role in that. So I graduated from UOG in 2021. So I was sitting in the same exact chairs that you guys were sitting in 10 years ago. And, you know, a lot of one question I always got was why UOG? So my senior year when I was applying to college, you know, a lot of my friends were going to, you know, these schools in the US mainland. And ultimately it came down to UOG for me. UOG was the right choice for me. It was a combination of economic factors and also what UOG had to offer. I saw that some of my friends were taking out huge sums of money going into debt to get the same degrees that UOG also has to offer. At the time, I wanted to be an architect and an engineer. So that's why I ended up choosing to pursue a degree in mathematics. So I ended up sticking with math throughout my time at UOG. Some of my professors were Dr. Brodowski, Dr. Rollerson when she was there. I remember having Dr. Zekli, Dr. Nagahashi's. Is he still there by any chance?
Nagahashi, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, so I remember having those classes. I think Dr. Transe was there at the time as well. Some of the challenges that I encountered when I was going through UOG at the time where, you know, it wasn't always the easiest thing, especially pursuing math. At least for me, it was definitely a big step, learning the study habits required to basically succeed and, you know, finish that degree. So I remember flunking one of Dr. Rollerson's biology quizzes, and she gave me a good wake-up call my freshman year. I'll never forget that. I'll never forget the comments that she would put on everybody's quizzes. And that stuck with me throughout the rest of my, actually 5 years, I was on the 5-year plan. And then before I ended up finishing up in 2011. So my senior year in college, as it was getting time for closing for me to finish up there, I was still interested in becoming an architect. I had done a couple summers as an intern. I was a CAD operator at Architects Aguon and Cristobal, and also my uncle's engineering firm. But then one day I was looking at Facebook and I saw one of my friends who graduated with me from high school at the same time. We were in National Honor Society together. He was the president, I was the vice president at the time. And I saw a picture of him riding in the back of an F-16. He was getting an incentive ride as part of going to the academy. And I just thought that was the coolest thing. And I said to myself, you know, I think I want to do that. I don't know exactly how to do that, but I'm going to find out. So I started doing some digging, found out that I would have to earn a commission and through the Air Force. But I wore glasses at the time and my eyes were really bad. I think I was 20/200, but I learned that you can get eye surgery and then apply for a waiver and then proceed with your officer training school application. To apply to officer training school, they put you through a myriad of tests. You have to supply 5 letters of recommendation as well, and then pass a flight physical. So all the while I was doing this, I started the process my senior year in college, and it took about 2 years to finish that entire process, primarily because I had to get eye surgery. So right after college, actually my senior year in college as well, I was going through civilian flight school at a Trend Vector Aviation. It was a lot of fun. I remember taking my first flight, and it just clicked. I remember giving my mom a call and saying, Mom, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. This is it. And I think my first flight actually was about 10 years ago. So after college, I was doing civilian flight school and working on my Air Force officer training school application. All the while, I was still working part-time at Chili's as a waiter. Towards the end of my civilian flight school portion, I was able to get a job at Trend Vector Aviation, flying island tours around the island. I did that for about 10 months. And then I began working at Skydive Guam, where I worked for another 10 to 12 months. Throughout my time there, I received word of my acceptance to officer training school. And the nice part about applying to officer training school is that you can know that you can have a pilot slot prior to signing any commitment paperwork. So to me, that really appealed to me. There are also other routes through military aviation of that interest you. You can fly for the Marines, fly for the Navy, and fly for the Army. Obviously, though, they all have different aircraft and different missions. For me, I didn't really think I could handle being out at sea for about 6 to 12 months at a time. I didn't think I was tough enough for the Army or Marines, so that's why I ended up choosing Air Force. And I'm really glad in hindsight that I chose the Air Force. So while I was working at Skydive Guam, I knew that I had a slot waiting for me at officer training school. And officer training school is about 9.5 weeks. You do learn the basics of how to march around, military customs and courtesies, but overall what they are focused on is testing your ability to time manage and make decisions as you lead other people. But how did STEM play a role in all of this? In my opinion, the problem-solving skill set that you develop while pursuing a STEM degree also applies to the decisions that I thought I was required to make as a officer training school candidate and even as a pilot. So after that 9.5 weeks at officer training school, I went on to what's called undergraduate pilot training. And that whole process took about 1.5 years. You can see over here, this aircraft will fly the T6 Texan 2. It's a 2-seat training aircraft. The instructor pilot will sit in the back here. The student will sit in the front, and you're really just focusing on learning the basics of how to operate the aircraft, how to do aerobatics, how to fly in weather, and then how to fly in formation. You're going about, I want to say 100 to 200 miles per hour in that aircraft. And then after 6 months of flying that aircraft, depending how you do, you either can track fighter bombers, tanker airlift, or helicopters. So it depends on how many slots for each are available and your rank in the class. I ended up choosing fighter bombers because that was always my dream. I thought it'd be cool to go fast at the time. So I was one of 5 active duty selectees to go to the fighter bomber track where we'll fly the T-38. It's a pretty old aircraft from the 60s. It's a twin engine, single tail, swept back wing, very basic fighter aircraft. So now you're doing a lot of the things that you did in T6s all over again in that aircraft, just going a lot faster, about 200 to 250 miles per hour now. And then you're learning more advanced aerobatics and more advanced formations. After that, after undergraduate pilot training is complete, you get your pilot wings that all the pilots wear now on their uniforms. And for us, I got selected to fly the F-15C after undergraduate pilot training. What you fly after undergraduate pilot training depends on a number of factors, what kind of pilots the Air Force needs at the time, what you choose, your rank in the class amongst your peers, and then what you ultimately want to fly. You're given a list of choices that you have to rank. And so depending on those three factors, that determines what you get to fly. After undergraduate pilot training, for those going to fighters, you go to Introduction to Fighter Fundamentals. That's about 3 months. This is where basically you learn the basics of dogfighting on other aircraft and then more advanced formations. We did SEER for about a month, which stands for survival, evade, resistance, and escape. That's something that every pilot will go through. And then after that, I went on to the F-15C, and you can see this. It just says B course. That's about 10 months where we'll learn how to fly the F-15C. We'll learn how to fly it from point A to point B. And then now we'll start learning how to employ the F-15 basically as a weapons system. And so about after 10 months, then I moved out to Kadena, where I've been now for the past 4 years as part of an active duty fighter squadron. A typical day for us is about 10 hours. Sometimes that gets stretched to 12. Sometimes it could be short as 7. Typical days, you'll show up in the morning right around 6:30. You'll get ready to brief. You'll step out to the aircraft around 7:30 or 8 o'clock. And then you end up taking off around 9 o'clock, where you'll fly for about an hour. We'll come back. We'll put all of our flight gear away, and then we'll debrief. And that's where we we recreate the mission that we did in order to get the best learning out of that. And then the last few hours in the day are spent doing other responsibilities or still trying to maintain your physical shape. Other responsibilities that I have here are just typical responsibilities that you'd expect out of an Air Force officer. We have a lot of emails that we do. Sometimes we're given extra projects, extra duties around the squadron that are specific to a fighter squadron, such as tracking everyone's training, making sure everyone has the most up-to-date flying products to fly with. And then one thing I'm doing right now is I'm part of the planning team for COPE North 2022. Throughout my time in the flying at the fighter squadron, I've done a lot of flying related travel. We call them TDYs. I've been to Florida, I've been to Alaska, and then actually one thing that's nice is we go to Guam a lot since we're so close being out here in Kadena. Just for everyone's situational awareness, we're about 1,000 to 1,200 miles northwest. We're one of the southernmost islands along the Ryukyu Island chain in Okinawa. Unfortunately, deployments are a reality for military personnel. I've been deployed once for about 6 months. Some pros and challenges of being in the fighter squadron, or just being an officer in the military in general. The pros are definitely the job security, the benefits. I thought, in my opinion, I think as a military officer, you're able to have a pretty, somewhat decent lifestyle fresh out of college. And then definitely about 5 to 7 years after that, your lifestyle is pretty comfortable. Obviously you're not rich, but you're able to have a lot of fun. However, some of the challenges can be long days. I've moved about every 3 years, with the exception of this past 3rd year period. And that's because we're staying in Kadena for another 3 years. Overall, though, how did STEM play a role in my day-to-day? I'm definitely not doing any advanced mathematics right now or solving for proofs. But first off, I think I can't harp enough on the critical thinking aspect. As fighter pilots, we're given tactical problems that require mission planning and critical thinking to solve. And then at a more basic level, when you're maneuvering your aircraft in relation to another fighter aircraft going at high speeds, you're managing your energy. To me, that's applied physics. Additionally, something I didn't talk about was overall having that STEM degree makes you very competitive when it comes time to applying for officer training school. Most of my classmates at officer training school, and even most of my peers right now, most of my coworkers have some sort of STEM degree. It's not required, but it's highly desired to the Air Force. Just want to kind of give you a glimpse on take around some missions. So as an officer in the military, after 20 years, you can retire and then receive a pension that isn't your full salary, but it's about, I think, 50% of like the highest 3 years of pay that you had received while you're in time in the military, and then you receive that pension for the rest of your life. Personally, for me, I don't think I see myself doing more than 20 years in the military. I think I'll pursue the airlines right after that. But overall, that's all I had. That was my story. What questions do you guys have?
Dr. Aquino was asking if you could share the video.
Oh, did it go through? Oh, if I could, I will find out. I'm pretty sure I could though. Sorry, let me open up the chat window and I can stop sharing my screen now. Okay. You guys can either type questions or just unmute your mics. What is the minimum service requirement as a pilot in the Air Force? So after, is it Dr. Kanata? After
no, just Katrina. Thank you, CJ.
Katrina, after you get your pilot wings, you are required to serve 10 years in the Air Force. What a lot of people end up doing is that puts them right around the 12-year mark. So they'll end up just serving out the remaining 8. Any measures radiation? I believe we have a metal plate in between the radar and our and the cockpit, just kind of shield us from some radiation coming out from that radar on the front of the aircraft. Do we work with drone pilots? Not on a day-to-day basis, Cub, but when we do these large force exercises, when we'll meet with about maybe 60 other people, we'll do big mission planning events as well. Those are the times when we integrate with them. We leverage their capabilities. A lot of what they can do is they can locate certain targets. Then the strikers, i.e. the bombers, will have to go and find that target. And then our job as the F-15C is to protect those strikers. Awesome. So Ray, I think I've played that before. In my last deployment, we would do these long flights and, spend about 7 hours in the aircraft and you have to pass the time somehow. So I think I've definitely done that before. Our flight formations, Cub, can vary. Typically, we operate as a 4-ship, and we can, when we're we can fly in a very close formation. We're about, I'd say 20-25 feet apart. And you can see the other pilot and the other aircraft airborne closely with a good amount of detail. We just Typically, we just do that because it looks cool, or if we're going through the weather. But for the most part, we're about 2 to 3 miles apart when we're practicing our aerial tactical maneuvers. Dr. Aquino, I go by Torch is my call sign. You can see that. Yeah. Typically, it's an acronym that centers around something that you messed up, and that's a common theme for a lot of fighter pilots. They'll try to give you something that sounds cool, but it's based off of basically a silly story that you did. So.
Are you able to share said story?
Basically, I crossed both active runways without permission, which is something very basic. So it stands for taxis over runway. CMAV happens, and the CMAV is basically a violation. So. Why do I always bring the Guam flag with you in the cockpit, Mom? That's just as I think I like to just proud of our heritage. As a typically you don't see a Chamorro boy flying a fighter aircraft, so that's something I like to bring with me every time. Will I ever fly other jets such as the F-35? It's possible. Right now, they are sending some people from the F-15C community to like other airframes, so. I might have a chance in a few years, but we'll see where the Air Force sends me. Is there a different certification to land on the ship? Do you work with the Navy? Yes, there is. Air Force fighter pilots, we're not qualified to land on the ship. When we work with the Navy, though, we'll work with them during exercises, and we'll try to integrate our capabilities together to accomplish a similar mission objective. But for example, at Cope North, we'll work with some of the Navy planes and maximize their capabilities with ours. Are you required to move to a solely admin role after a certain amount of years of service, or will you be able to fly all 20 years? It typically depends what the Air Force needs. Sometimes they will place you in an admin role. I've seen that happen. But at the same time, there are a lot of people that continue to fly for all 20 years. My role in Cope North, Mom, I'm just one of the lead planners for the Combat Air Forces section. However, it's my first time planning, so I'm still taking a lot of direction from my mentors. So what's up, dude? So what do we do when Mother Nature calls on a 7-hour flight? We have it's basically a plastic bag with a tie wire that helps you seal it, and inside of that bag is the same powder that's found in diapers. So we use the restroom in that. So it's number one only on the long flights. And basically they give you medication in case you have to go number 2. So that way you can do it after the flight. When you make a quick maneuver, do you find that you visualize a problem with physics, mathematics, or something else? It would be I'd say it's a combination of physics and then experience as well. A lot of times when we're maneuvering into another aircraft, we're shooting for something called the control zone, which is about 1,000 to 3,000 feet back and about within a 30-degree cone centered around the aircraft. Let me go and put some sticks on it. You can picture a cone that's around the aircraft. We're always trying to put our aircraft in that cone in order to simulate shooting that other aircraft down. It must be trained to. Did I ever have a fear of heights when I first started? I do have a fear of heights, but to me it was different being in an airplane, I guess. But I would be a little nervous standing if we have a control tower here that's about 12 stories up, and standing on the balcony if you want to is definitely not the easiest thing to do. How do pilots deal with gravity during extreme turns and dives? We wear a anti-gravity suit, a G suit, basically, and it's hooked up to compressed air supplied by the aircraft's engines. That's obviously filtered and cooled, and that air gets pumped into your G suit, and that G suit inflates, constricts your legs and your abdomen, and forces your blood, or prevents your blood from pulling in your lower extremities during high G maneuvers. And then we also do another called anti-G straining maneuver, AGSM. And that's tensing your muscles and then doing quick breaths while you're under G. And then experience over time increases your G tolerance. But we'll pull up to about 9 Gs, and maybe we'll hold that for about 15 seconds. But we can sustain high 7s for a long period of time. Putting cell phones in the airplane mode, LOL, I don't think there is a, I don't know if there's really a reason. I think it's probably, in my opinion, I think it's an old habit from older aircraft that just kind of stuck with the industry. Who are the others who took the route to OTS? There are a lot of other pilots as well. My cousin, Dustin Alger, he's a graduate from Sanchez and graduate from UOG. He actually lives just down the street from me on Kadena. He's a KC-135 pilot right now. Justin Figueroa, GW graduate, graduated 2011 from UOG with a math degree as well. He's flying E8s, J-stars up at Warner Robins Air Force Base. Our pilot helmet, the one that we have a big helmet that we wear. The one that you saw me in the videos are smaller one, but we have another one. It's called a joint helmet mounted cueing system. And what that helmet, it's coupled with an accelerometer and a magnetic. Basically, we have a device that produces a magnetic field in the cockpit, so that the aircraft is able to tell where you're looking with that helmet, and that helmet will help is used to cue your radar and your heat-seeking missile. That helmet, I think it's about, I want to say it's 100 grand. So it's Range Rover on your head. Okay, I can give the floor back to you, JC, if no one has any question. Or the F-15C is about, I think in the 60s, around 60 to 70 million dollars, just depending on what which radar it has on it. Personally, I don't, just because we're typically doing a local flight around Kadena, but I know a lot of the heavy pilots do. Do we fire any? Sometimes we do. I've done a live missile fire basically had a drone. We had to fly all the way up to Florida to do that, use basically their missile range, which is over the water. And I fired a AIM-9 M, which is a pretty old heat-seeking missile, but it was probably one of the coolest experiences I've ever had. And then I fired the gun before. It's a 20 millimeter Gatling gun, about 6 barrels, and fires about 3,000 to 6,000 rounds per minute. And then JC, go for it. One last question, brother.
What is your advice for students that are still trying to find their passion?
My advice is, let's say, try a lot of things. And then when you find the one thing that you're very passionate about, set that goal and try to figure out, try to focus your energy as practically as possible towards accomplishing that goal. And then don't be afraid. I would say, don't let other people tell you no. Because when I was going through my journey, there were a lot of people telling me that, oh, I wouldn't be able to do this for reason X, Y, or Z. But then if I listened to them, I probably wouldn't be here right now. With like vision being one of those things. Like, oh, I've had people say like, oh, you want me to fly for the military when it's too hard, or oh, you wear glasses. So keep trying to find solutions to accomplish that goal is my overall takeaway, whether that's starting a business or becoming an engineer or whatever is your goal that brings you personal fulfillment. Don't let other people tell you no. Pilot community is small. All the local pilots, Roki Matanani, we grew up riding our bikes around Benilo, even around UOG when we were in middle and high school, and now he's a 757 captain flying for APA out of Aguon. Zach Duenas, I don't think he's a FD 2007 grad. And I don't think he went to UOG, but he's flying for the Navy as well. So there's a lot of local guys and girls who have done this. So let me go ahead and post my contact information one more time. So if you guys have any other questions, feel free to reach out. And I can answer questions on both, flying for the military or even just being an officer in the military. I do my best if it's not Air Force, but I do have other friends, so I can put you in touch with, and they can answer your questions that you have.
Okay, if there are no more questions, we would like to thank Celestino or CJ Aguon again for guesting our alumni series for this week. Thank you so much, CJ.
Thanks for having me, guys. I'm always honored.
Before we leave, can we have people to people to turn on their cameras for a group screenshot if you guys want to?
Sure.